Step Into My Office is a podcast filled with real conversations and interviews about entrepreneurship. Hosted by the founders of 135 Agency and built with Black women in mind. If you like us, leave us a review and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Now let's start the show.
Hey, Sap, I'm super excited about today's convo.
Hey, Shantae, me too, definitely. So today's episode is with Carlos Swepson. He's the owner and head chef of Harlem restaurant BLVD Bistro. Shantae, you said the food there is amazing.
Off the chain.
We actually spoke with him in 2019 pre-pandemic about how he started his business. And it was a really fascinating conversation that, we really wanted to make sure aired. He had just moved into a new and bigger location in Harlem. We spoke with him about working with family, getting funding for your restaurant, but most fascinating was his personal gems on integrity and how it can affect your business.
He definitely let some secrets out, definitely.
So let's listen, and then we'll come back with our Black Girl Boss moment.
We have the world famous Carlos Swepson, chef and entrepreneur owner of BLVD Bistro in Harlem. Thank you for being here with us and all of our Step Into My Office listeners. This is the place for the conversation about Black women and business and entrepreneurship. So we can start by, just talking about the fact that you started your career as a chef. Is there a little bit of insight you can share with us about the decision to leap into entrepreneurship?
Yes. Thank you for having me. For me, going into ownership is a natural progression. I've been in the culinary field, over 20 years, maybe almost 30 years. And I went to college and I came home and I just started waiting tables. And then it just went from there. And then I didn't go to culinary school until 2001. I was 31. I knew I wanted to own a restaurant, right? But you just don't know how, right? You don't know how it's going to happen, or when it's going to happen, or how it's supposed to happen. I just always knew that this is what I wanted to do. So then around about the summer of 2013, my mom was like, I should talk to your dad and we should try to figure something out. Maybe give you a loan or something to do your thing. And at the time, Markeisha was my girlfriend. We weren't married yet. So she started looking for places, and that's when she found BLVD Bistro. And it was still called BLVD Bistro when I purchased it from the gentleman. So we went into negotiation, and I hadn't even secured any funds yet. So I put together, my wife helped me put together a plan for my dad, and we put together an agreement and a plan. And the funds came in three separate stages. It came in $15,000, $125,000, and then $100,000. It was stagnating. Like the purchase price of the restaurant was $125,000. The security deposit was $15,000. And then the $100,000 was for opening operating costs.
Now, Carlos, I know that your mom came to you and suggested loaning you some money, but was there ever a time when you were like, well,
no, because
let me go to the banks, or nah, I don't necessarily want to involve family in business because it can be complicated? Was there ever a moment that you considered or explored getting a loan from a bank, or were you always, on board with the idea of borrowing from your parents?
Private funds are always better than a bank, right? Because you can kind of dictate the terms. You're selling your friends or your family on your dream, right? You're letting them buy into your dream. This is not me just saying, oh, I'm your son, loan me the money, right? This is like you're selling someone on your dream on how them collecting 4% to 7% interest on their $240,000, where you could give them 15%, right? That's a different number. And it becomes, and then you haven't given up 1% of the business, right? So now the business is still 100% of the shares are still open on the table, right? Which I knew was a good thing to have because as a business grow, you want to have those shares, right? So then when you do want to go to 116th and 8th Avenue to a bigger location with more money, now you're going into a multi-million-dollar project. Now you're able to raise capital because now my wife has 51 and I got 49, right? So now 100% is out there. So now if you do want to go and decide to raise capital in other ways, you have 100% of the business and your loans are just basically considered liabilities, right?
Now, did that original seed money from your parents, did that come with any like crazy strings or like stipulations where
Well,
they
it wasn't a percentage loan, right? It was basically paid back with an agreed number, right? Which was a fixed number. So with balloon payments throughout the year. So it was basically fixed numbers with balloon payments. So that was a good thing, right? And then there was other things in the promissory note that if you miss these payments, this payment, possible liens could be put on a business and that so forth. So it didn't have to be any verbal because everything was spelled out, right? So so it took the mom and dad situation out of it.
smart?
How do you balance the wanting to do what your passion is, which is being super creative in the kitchen and making that food sing for your customers with the daily operations of the business? Is it a drain on your creativity? Have you mastered how to do that? A lot of entrepreneurs, they're great at baking cakes, or they're great at making t-shirts, or they're great at creating, building, making whatever that thing is that they make. But the operations piece of business, the business of running the business, that piece can be demoralizing, discouraging, frustrating. It makes people grow kind of like a hard, callous skin. How have you balanced that?
Balance is has always been a weird word for me, right? Because I never felt that you could truly balance anything, right? You could balance a bicycle, and that's about it. Like, I knew that I had to put people in place to be able to do things that I couldn't do or I wasn't good at, right? I knew what I was good at, right? I knew I was good at guest experience, and other things I wasn't good at. I wasn't necessarily good at, right? So we were able to put people in place. My wife was able to run some back office things, right? I was able to have a good financial person. Then I was able to hire a really good CPA person that understood New York City tax laws and restaurant different things, because the tax laws may be a little different when you're dealing with tipped employees. So I knew that I had to put these people in place. And then when I did get into a struggle, I asked one of my friends, I asked Aaliyah, I don't know if you know Aaliyah that owns Make My Cake, right? So she's a really good friend of mine.
We totally know Aaliyah. Been knowing her since 2004,
right. So I asked
2003.
Aaliyah, I need some help. And then she said, well, I have someone that can help you with consulting, like to kind of bring everything underneath one umbrella. So then when she says the guy's name, she was like, Jason. I was like, Jason Wallace? I was like, he was my instructor in culinary school, right? So this was 2015. This was a year after I opened. So Jason has been with me ever since as a consultant, not as an employee of the restaurant, actually helping us grow the business and helping fill in areas that I was not good at. And that way it allowed me to focus on making biscuits and making blueberry pancakes. And my wife, Markeisha, she always says to me, stop getting involved in things that you don't need to get involved in. You don't even have the answer to it, so why are you getting involved in it?
Now, I imagine that you have had to go back, I think you said earlier, to do a second round of financing. What do you, now that you're in a better position or a different position, you've been 5 years in the business, how do you present yourself to the financial institutions, the bank, this go around to get, I'm assuming, much more than you originally started your business with?
We still use some private lenders as some friends and stuff, because I always felt like that was an easier way. And we also use some commercial lenders. And by this point, you have 4 years of tax returns, you have P&L statements, you have evaluations, right? So you have all these business plans, so that when you do present it to private and commercial institutions, they see what the business is, so you don't have to sell. All I'm selling you is on the food, right? I don't have to sell you on a number, because a number is right there.
That was really good advice that you want to write down and remember. In the beginning, you're always selling an idea and projections and forecasts, and not real solid numbers. Once you have real solid numbers, the game changes completely for going to get financing. So Carlos, Boulevard Bistro is in the heart of Harlem, the old location and the new one. And we all know that Harlem has a limitless amount of soul food restaurants. What would you say is the USP, the unique selling proposition for Boulevard Bistro that keeps your customers loyal? I've heard you say guest experience multiple times.
Well, one of the things is that, Boulevard Bistro is a family-owned restaurant, right? So you have my wife, myself, and my wife's, my sister-in-law, she's my manager, right? So it's this whole family experience. So when you come in, you're getting this experience that you're not necessarily eating at a place that no one knows or cares about you. So I think that's what helps us, right? And then on top of that, I don't try to recreate menus. I don't try to recreate food and cuisines, right? All I try to do is give you something that you've grown up eating and just make it better. That's it. I don't worry about other people doing the same thing I'm doing, because I think that's actually a great thing, right? So someone asked me the other day, "Oh, you're going to be next to Melba's Blue Jeans and Chocolate." I said, "That's phenomenal. I'm in the mix with these people that have been there and that I'm standing on their shoulders. It's the mix." I said, "You don't go down in Chinatown and say, why there's only one Chinese restaurant in Chinatown," right? No one even asked that question, right? It doesn't even come to your mind,
That's
right?
true.
When you walk down Mulberry Street, you don't say, "Oh,
Right.
wow, why is there so many Italian restaurants here?" You could care less, right? You just look at which one you like and you walk in.
Well, we have this news section that we have entitled "How I Fucked Up," and so while we could go on with stories of our own, we like to ask entrepreneurs to, share a frank moment when how you fucked up and give us some, our listeners some insight on what you would do different.
Well, number
today.
one, I would listen to my wife in the beginning and not think. And not think that I could do
Hello.
and not think that
Another
I could
Black
do
Girl
Day
Magic
one.
moment.
on my own. I would listen to someone that knows something better than me other than myself. Because I'm in there making biscuits in the morning, I'm making the grits and all this and that. My kitchen staff did not necessarily looking at me as the executive chef. They almost looking at me as I'm one of them, because I'm personable and
Right,
because
you're
I'm
personable. That is a challenge for
and
every
because I'm on the
boss who
lines
is
with them.
cool.
So that's one of the things that I would do different. Another thing that I would do different, I would have understood that your personal life overflows into your business life. But as a man, I always thought that I could separate the two. That what I did into my personal life, that it wouldn't flood over into my business.
Do you have an example of what you mean by that? Like, anything?
What I'm
'cause
talking
that's
about
very
is
interesting.
when I'm lying and being dishonest to my wife. It causes you to be lying and dishonest in other areas in your life.
Okay, wait a second now.
No, you asked me, so I'm
Where are we
telling
going
you.
with this? We're interested.
That's a behavior. If Chef Carlos has this behavior outside of the restaurant that's unhealthy, it's very difficult to switch over and all of a sudden you have a healthy behavior while you're in a restaurant, right? And then that's something that I would change, because your unhealthy behavior, whether it's lying, cheating, and other things, this follows over, right? So what happens is that this becomes part of your character, right? So this became part of my character. So as it becomes part of your character, people that are attracted to you are going to be people that almost have that like character of yours, right? So I look up and I have a staff full of people that's like me.
Wow. That
Oh
right
my
there. Did
God.
everyone hear that piece of it?
Oh my God.
And you know why that's so key? Because if there's anybody listening to this podcast who has ever heard Saptoso or myself speak anywhere at any conference, the one thing we always say is that one thing we found for ourselves that is completely false is this whole narrative that it's business, not personal. That is 100% bullshit. Business is entirely personal. Anything that you're going to mortgage your house for, borrow money and put your name on the line for, work on 85% of the day, that is entirely personal. It has everything to do with who you are, your wellness, your family, and that whole work-life balance that's bullshit too. But yes, everything you just said is exactly right, because the business is like a child. You're growing it, you're crafting their personality, and that whatever type of bad habits you have, you're going to project them right onto that child.
Going back to your question on what I would do differently, right? Those are things that I had to sit back and make changes, because you can't be blessed with a multi-million-dollar business and think you're going to grow it to 8 figures and still have all of this behavior. I don't want to throw somebody else out there, but I just say this. So Allen Iverson, right? He was the best guard I've ever seen, right? Because he was pure talent. But his personal life probably cut his basketball career maybe 4 or 5 years short.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
But the talent was so great that it took a minute for everyone to see that his personal life was disruptive. So that's what was going to happen with me, right? Either I was going to make changes in my personal life because my talent was so great that it overshadowed these areas, but at some point it was breaking through everything. So it was going to cut things short. Does that make sense?
That makes
Totally.
sense. And listen, I mean, character is everything. Integrity is everything. You can't just stop it in one area and think, it's going to be okay and not having it in another. But Carlos, thank you so much for joining us today on Step Into My Office. You really have given us some key insights and principles into your story, launching a restaurant,
Right.
and just values and morals as a Black man, as an entrepreneur. Thank you so much. But listen, tell us where we can find, Boulevard Bistro online,
So you can look at our
on social media.
for updates at boulevardbistrony.com. That's Boulevard spelled out, Bistro, BISTRONY. You can look at that on Instagram and then also on Facebook for updates. And, we put everything into this. We put everything that we have on all angles, from emotional to financial. We put everything into this new location because we believe that this will be the flagship.
Can't wait to see it. So thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you so much.
Wow, Carlos was really thought-provoking. I mean, that last part where he was talking about personal life, what you do in your personal life, spilling over into your professional life. I think people are really going to walk away with some gems from that.
Me too. I think the entire conversation from beginning to end, he's shared some things like, raising money by personal lenders and making sure you outline everything in extreme detail, even though it's a mom and dad, a wife. One of the biggest takeaways I had was how Black women were instrumental in his journey.
Yeah.
Sister-in-law, wife, mother. I mean, that right there just is further confirmation of what we all know about the power of Black women in business and, how that, how we're such a force. Also, the comment about how one day you look up and the business is staffed with a bunch of people like you.
I worked in a restaurant as a waitress for some years. Chefs have a reputation of being hoes, okay? Messing with staff. And then just because they work crazy hours, they're always super stressed out. And so they get into these affairs, really these workplace affairs. So that was when he was like, my personal life, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Because they have a reputation, like personal trainers and all of that.
And bus drivers.
For being, terrible.
Well, you come in contact with a lot of women. These people who are service providers come in contact with a lot of women day to day. And unfortunately, a lot of women look at owners, entrepreneurs, bosses like, somebody that they're immediately drawn to for financial reasons or because they seem powerful, and that adds an extra layer of attraction on them. So I could see how people who are chefs or just entrepreneurs in general have all kinds of coochie being thrown from a mile away. But
it, it happens more subtle than just like the coochie being thrown. What happens is you working in a restaurant all night. The restaurant closes maybe 12 midnight, 1 in the morning. You're cleaning up the kitchen. And afterwards, a lot of the crew go to the bar.
So you think it's crew? I wasn't even thinking them.
No,
I was
thinking it's work. It's workplace. Because
I was thinking people who just come in.
When are they not out? No. When are they the people they work the close that have the most access to? Because when you are a chef, you're in that restaurant 24/7. So if
close
and
proximity
it's high stress, especially if it's a pop-in restaurant. So after the restaurant closes, people, if it's like a weekend, they're sitting at the bar. The bartender might still be in there cleaning up. Ain't nothing to get you a little drink or whatever. Then you're striking up conversation. Now all of a sudden the next day you're flirting. They're flirting with each other. Yeah, because I had a little situation one time when I was.
Oh, okay.
I was a single woman. But I'm just saying, like, I know exactly how it goes
high
down.
stress, close proximity, and long hours working together
Long hours, it's
equals
a
recipe for
That's what I'm
disaster.
saying. And it don't even start out like they're intending to cheat. It's just like they're always there.
The first time, it doesn't mean that it doesn't start out like they're intending to cheat. But after you trip over cheating a few times, it's like not an accident.
At that point, but it's just so easy to do it in that type of setting. And, if it's a restaurant, the waitresses are usually attractive women, the hostesses.
And bartenders.
Yes, they're always, I just could completely see it. Not trying to say that that's his story, but that makes a lot of sense.
Because we don't know his specific story. He just shared a key piece of information that I hope everybody heard. Yeah. If your business is a reflection of you and you got some things that need to be fixed, that's the reason why that business isn't growing.
Yeah, but when you do things that are dishonest, you either pay on the front end or the back end, but you gonna pay.
You gonna pay. So yes, ma'am.
Sometimes you gotta, reap them consequences sooner than later. And sometimes those consequences could mean you losing your livelihood, your freedom, your family, a limb,
worse than all those things, your reputation.
Hey, you. Love Step Into My Office? Subscribe now and leave us a review. Got a business question for Shantae or Saptosa? Use hashtag Step Into My Office. That's hashtag Step Into My Office. And if you have video or podcast production needs, visit verse2media.com. That's verse2media.com. Now back to Step Into My Office.
Today for our Black Girl Boss, we are featuring none other than B. Smith. B. Smith was a model, lifestyle expert, author, TV host, and more. She started her career in fashion and was the first Black woman on the cover of Mademoiselle. She ran 3 B. Smith restaurants and hosted the TV show B. Smith with Style, which I remember it came on basic cable when I was younger, and I've never seen anything like her. She's gorgeous. She was very savvy. She could do it all. She authored 3 home entertaining books. In 2012, she was inducted into the American Chef Corps and won a Silver Spoon Award. In her later years, she used her battle with Alzheimer's disease to raise awareness about the illness, particularly among Black people. Sadly, she recently passed away after her long battle with Alzheimer's, but we remember her in our hearts as a wonderful, beautiful, lifestyle expert, and her legacy will live on. So B. Smith, we salute you for being a Black girl boss.
And for being the personification of fabulousness.
Amen.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Step Into My Office. Remember to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And use the hashtag Step Into My Office to send us feedback and questions. We read every ounce of feedback. We read every question, and you will hear information about feedback and questions in future episodes. Shout out to Verse2 for producing this podcast and being the best in the business. Visit them at verse2media.com if you need a podcast or video producer. See you.